Welcome back to the Phantom Navigator. I am redoing this episode about shadows because last time I did this for some odd reason, the sound did not upload, and I am so sorry, you guys, but let's get back into it. Welcome aboard. You found your way once again into the Phantom Navigator, that drifting vessel somewhere between folklore and the afterlife. Tonight's compass doesn't point north. It points towards the corners of your room. You know the ones. That little stretch of darkness your lamp never quite reaches. That hallway that always feels occupied. We are talking about shadow figures. Not ghosts exactly, not demons, at least not officially. Just silhouettes. No faces, no voices, no resumes. Just a presence standing there like it's waiting for its shift to start. Across continents, across centuries, across cultures that never spoke to each other, people describe the same thing. Human-shaped shadow. Watching. Sometimes moving. Sometimes standing perfectly still like it's trying very hard to look like a coat rack. But coat racks don't usually breathe. Tonight we sail through sightings from Japan, Europe, the Middle East, the Americas, and the strange borderlands between sleep and waking. So dim the lights. If something moves in a corner of your eye, don't worry. It's probably just your imagination. Probably. Shadow figures may be one of the most commonly reported paranormal encounters on Earth. And that says something on a planet where people swear they've seen ghost ships, lake monsters, haunted dolls, and relatives who say they'll return your Tupperware. But shadow figures show up everywhere. People report them in bedrooms, hospitals, prisons, forests, abandoned buildings, and occasionally the hallway when you get up for water at 3 a.m. They appear as solid black silhouettes, sometimes flat like cut-out cardboard, sometimes three-dimensional. Many witnesses say the shadows move against the light, which physics would politely like to have a conversation about. Others say they glide. No footsteps, no sound, just movement. And then they vanish like someone turned off a projector. But what makes shadow people so disturbing is something very simple. They look human. Close enough to recognize, but wrong enough to terrify. It's the same instinct that makes mannequins creepy, or wax museums, or that one coworker who smiles a little too long. You know the one. Your brain keeps saying, that's a person. And something deeper whispers, no, it's not. Now, if shadow figures had a celebrity, it would be the Hat Man. Thousands of people around the world report seeing the exact same silhouette, tall, dark, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. Usually a fedora or something from the noir detective who knows too much collection. He appears most often in bedrooms at night. Witnesses describe waking up and seeing him standing beside the bed, which is already a terrible way to wake up. Alarm clocks are bad enough, but a silent shadow man in a hat? That's a different category of morning anxiety. People say he doesn't speak, he just watches. Sometimes he slowly walks away, sometimes he fades into the wall, and sometimes he stands there like he's reviewing your life choices, which honestly might be fair. The strange part? Many witnesses claim they've never heard of Hatman before seeing him, yet their description matches perfectly. Same hat, same height, same unsettling vibe. Like a paranormal park ranger quietly checking the campsite. Now, what I've heard about the Hat Man, there is a theory. Some people have a theory that he, for whatever reason, I still don't know why, checks on people who have like spiritual gifts. And anytime someone said they have seen the Hat Man, I have asked them, if you don't mind telling me, are you gifted spiritually, supernaturally in any way? All of them had said yes. So I do support the theory that he supports on gifted people, that he just checks on them. I don't know why. I don't know what for. I don't know if he reports to someone. Who? I don't know. I guess I love the theory that he checks on the gifted. I'd like to think I've never heard of him hurting anyone. It's more of a fear of seeing him at most. So I don't know. I guess it calms me to think that he's just checking on the people with gifts. So if you ever see him, maybe that's why. Japan has a long tradition of spirits known as yokai, creatures that live just outside the rules of reality. One of the closest matches to shadow figures is the eerie Kagi Onna. Legend says she appears only as a shadow on walls or paper screens. You don't see her body, only her silhouette. Imagine walking down a quiet hallway at night, you pass a sliding paper door, and on the wall beside it, you see a shadow of a woman, long hair, standing still, except there's one small detail that ruins the evening. There's no one there casting the shadow, just the outline, watching. Some stories claim the shadow moves independently. Others say if you open the door, the shadow disappears. And sometimes the person who saw it disappears too. Japan also has stories of shadow people seen near graveyards or abandoned houses. They're often described as thin silhouettes that slip behind objects, almost like they're trying to stay out of sight. Which raises a disturbing question. Are they hiding from us? Or are we hiding from them? Now, interesting enough, I'm in Sicily now, but if you were with me since before I came here to Sicily, I was in Nagasaki, Japan. I can verify I have seen so many shadow figures. I have never seen so many shadow figures ever. And I have had other paranormal friends who have visited Japan, and I've made that comment. They thought about it, and they're like, you know what? You're right. Now that I think about it, I have never seen so many shadow figures before. It's crazy. A lot of times they have occasionally ended in my house, but it's more to me of a warning because they would just, as soon as I see them, they would disappear. It was more of a warning of don't cross our boundaries because we can enter your home. I wasn't going to cross their boundaries anyways. I'm not about to make a shadow figure upset at me. Okay? Because I know spiritually I probably could not win that fight. I'm good. I'm good. I do remember the first time I saw a shadow figure in Japan. It was late evening, going into later, it's very hot in the summertime in Japan. I just got there, just moved into my apartment at the time. I was walking my dog, and I lived at the time near Sasebo Bay. If you need a complete picture, so where I was walking, you could actually see Sasebo Bay. And I started walking, and looking over, I saw a tall looking figure. It looked like it was wearing a samurai uniform it was a shadow figure, but like I said, tall, looked like it was wearing the outline was like the samurai warrior one, if you know what I'm talking about. And I looked around. I remember looking around. I don't actually know what I was looking for. I was looking for like a glitch in reality or something else that just seemed off. And then, like I said, I was walking my dog, and my dog at that time, she just turned 2 years old, so she was still kind of puppy-like. She still acted a certain way that once she saw a person, she had to go investigate. She had to go see them. She only acted this way when she saw someone new, because she had to go say hi. She needed to sniff them. She needed to see their friend or foe, maybe get a pet, maybe bark to assert her dominance, whatever the case. She started acting this way and started going, pulling as she would towards a new person, over towards that shadow figure. So that's how I knew she saw it too, which is good. There's some Japan was crazy for me. There was so many paranormal experiences that if I did not have my dog with me, I would have, and she did not react, I would have thought I was going crazy. That was the first time. I could not figure out what was going on. I thought it was just me. I was looking around, I was like, all right, what is going on? But like I said, luckily my dog responded in a way, not in a way she saw an animal, not in a way she sees something else, but in that particular way. When she saw a new person, she had to go say hi. She was trying to pull towards it. I was like, all right, she sees it. But I just kept on walking. That's the best thing you can do in paranormal Japan. Is if you see something unexplainable, it's best just to leave it alone and act like it's not there. Italy's dark silhouettes. Italy, with its medieval towns and ancient ruins, has no shortage of strange sightings. In some regions, people speak of shadow monks seen wandering old monasteries. Witnesses describe figures in long robes that appear as pure darkness. No detail, no face. Just a moving patch of night. One story from an abandoned abbey describes a monk-shaped shadow walking down a hallway. A security guard followed it. Because humans are naturally curious creatures, also because security guards are apparently braver than the rest of us. The shadow turned a corner and vanished. When the guard reached the end of the hall, there was no door, no window, just a solid stone wall. The guard reported finished his shift and then decided a career in daytime employment might be healthier. In Middle Eastern folklore, shadow figures are often connected to jinn. Jinn are ancient beings said to exist alongside humans built in a different dimension. They can become invisible. They can take human form. And according to many traditions, they can appear as shadows. Some accounts describe dark figures standing in doorways or corners of rooms, watching silently. Sometimes witnesses report the shadow suddenly stretching unnaturally across the floor. What is impressive is what is impressive in a terrifying sort of way? It's like the darkness decided to try yoga. Jin legends warn that these beings sometimes observe humans out of curiosity, which means somewhere in the universe there might be a shadow creature thinking, wow, they watch a lot of true crime documentaries. In North America, shadow figure sightings often happen during sleep paralysis. That state where you wake up, but your body refuses to move. It's like your brain booted up before the operating system finished loading. During sleep paralysis, people frequently report a dark figure standing near the bed, sometimes multiple figures, sometimes sitting in the dark, which is exactly the sort of thing that makes you reconsider sleeping ever again. Scientists believe the brain may be projecting dream and imagery onto the waking world. Your mind is still partly dreaming, but your eyes are open. So your nightmare gets upgraded from imagination to visitor. Across many cultures, there's a belief that shadow figures might simply be watchers, observers, not ghosts, not demons, just something that exists besides us. Imagine humanity living in a house, and shadow figures are the neighbors quietly peeking through the windows. Not malicious, just curious. Which would explain why they rarely interact. They just stand there like cosmic security cameras. Still, it raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if they've always been there, watching us invent fire, build cities, argue about pineapple on pizza? And they're still trying to figure out what exactly we're doing. There are several theories. Psychologists point to pareidolia, the brain's habit of turning vague shapes into recognizable figures. Your mind sees a shadow and fills in the rest. Evolution trained us to spot human shapes quickly. Better safe than eaten by a cave lion. Neurologists suggest sleep disruption and stress can create vivid shadow hallucinations. Others think it might be infrared light and subtle visual distortions playing tricks on the brain. But the paranormal researchers argue something else. They say the consistency of reports is strange. People across cultures describe nearly identical figures: tall, dark, silent, watching, which leave one possibility. Maybe shadow people are exactly what they look like. Not ghosts, not hallucinations, just something standing in the dark. Let's be honest, darkness has always frightened humans, not because it's empty, because it might not be. Somewhere in the world tonight, someone will wake up, they'll open their eyes, and standing in the corner of their rooms will be shapes darker than the dark. Perfectly still, like it's waiting. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's a trick of the lights. Or maybe, just maybe, the shadows are simply where something else lives. And every once in a while, they step a little too far into our world. In the towering halls of Himeji Castle, Guards and night workers have reported something unsettling for decades. A tall shadow figure appears at the end of a long corridors after sunset. Witnesses say it looks like a samurai silhouette, but without armor details, and just a pure black outline against pale castle walls. The strange part is the movement. The figure doesn't walk. It slides along the floor like spilled ink, passing doorways and vanishing at corners that lead nowhere. A few workers claim that when they turned on the lights, the shadow remained for a moment longer than the darkness should allow, then folded into the wall. Historians point out that Himeji survived wars, sieges, and executions. Apparently, some residents never clocked out. In rural Edo era accounts, people told stories of a shadow that appeared on shoji screens. The figure looked like a woman with long hair, but she only exists as a silhouette. These sightings are connected to the eerie spirits called Kajiana. Witnesses described walking through a dimly lit house and seeing her shadow cast across the paper wall. Except there was no one in the room. Sometimes the shadow would move slowly as if breathing. Sometimes it would tilt its head toward the observer. The folklore warning was simple. If the shadow turns to face you, leave the house immediately. In abandoned coal mines in northern Japan, miners once described a figure they called the Tunnel Man. A black human-shaped shadow appeared at the far end of mine tunnels. Workers thought it was another miner at first. They would wave. The shadow never waved back. How rude. Instead, it slowly receded deeper into darkness, always staying just beyond lantern light. In several accounts, miners chased the figure, thinking someone had gotten lost. The tunnels always ended in solid rock. No person, no footsteps, just a shape that had somewhere else to be. Late-night gondoliers in Venice have occasionally described something strange beneath certain bridges. A shadow shaped like a person appears standing at the bridge railing. The problem is, the bridge is empty. From the boat below, the silhouette is clear against the lantern light. A human form leaning forward, watching the water. But when the gondolier looks up directly, there's no one there. One boatman joked that Venice has so many ghosts, the shadows start forming their own union. In remote monasteries along the Apennine Mountains, monks once recorded sightings of a dark-robed figure walking silent cloisters. Unlike normal ghosts, these figures had no visible features. Just the shape of a monk carved from darkness. Witnesses reported something deeply unsettling. The shadow monk cast no shadow of its own. It simply absorbed light as it moved. One record from the 1700s described it as pausing beside a prayer bench, then slowly dissolved into the stone wall. Even in a monastery, that's enough to make a priest sleep with the lights on. The dense woods of Black Forest in Germany have produced plenty of legends. One lesser-known tale speaks of a tall shadow figure seen between trees at dusk. Travelers claimed the shape would appear ahead of them on the trail. When approached, it would slide behind a tree. But there was never anyone there. Some hikers reported the shadow reappearing repeatedly, always ahead, always just out of reach, like a guide that refuses to be followed. Or something making sure you stayed on the path, which, in that forest, might actually be the nicest paranormal experience available. In the Paris catacombs, explorers in the underground tunnels occasionally report shadow figures inside corridors. Unlike ghosts, these shapes don't glow. They are darker than the surrounding darkness. Witnesses describe them standing at tunnels' intersections, watching. And when lights move towards them, the silhouette appears to step sideways onto walls of skulls and bones, which is unsettling for two reasons. One, the walls are solid. Two, the walls are made of 6 million people who are unalived. Not that sort of place you want extra residents. The Scottish Moor Walker. On a remote island near Rannoch's Moor, hikers have reported seeing a distant, walking figure in fog. The silhouette appears human but completely black against gray mist. Witnesses say the figure walks across the moor in long strides. But here's the disturbing part. The ground in those areas often deep bog. Anyone walking there would sink, yet the shadow moves easily. Some claim it's the spirits of lost travelers. Others think it might be something older than roads, simply wandering the land it remembers. In Teatro Le Fenice in Italy, stage workers have occasionally reported a strange silhouette. During rehearsals, when the theater is mostly empty, a tall shadow appears in the upper balcony. It looks like a person leaning forward, watching the stage. Staff members have climbed up to investigate. The balcony is empty. The shadow disappears, but sometimes it reappears again during the next rehearsal. Opera houses already have enough drama. Apparently, even the shadows enjoy a good performance. In narrow alleys near Charles Bridge in Prague, residents once described seeing a small shadow shaped like a child. The figure ran along walls and corners at night. Witnesses said it moved too quickly for a person. Sometimes the shadow would stop under a lantern. For a moment, it looked like a child standing in the light. Then it would stretch unnaturally along the wall and disappear onto a doorway. Prague already feels like a city that remembers things. Perhaps the shadows are just memories walking around. You could slide back into narrate. From a castle corridors in Japan to bone tunnels beneath Paris, the same silhouette keeps appearing. No face, no voice, just the outline of something shaped like us, but not quite. 10 creepy shadow encounters. Number 1, the shadow in Dyatlov Pass region, Russia. In a remote region of Dyatlov Pass, they are infamous for the tragic Dyatlov Pass incident, which I did an earlier episode on. But the decades since, hikers and rescue teams working that area have reported something strange. Several witnesses claim to have seen a tall, black figure moving across snowy ridges at night. Not walking, gliding. One search volunteer in the 1990s described watching a silhouette cross the snowfield. About 100 meters away, he assumed it was another rescuer. When he reached the area, there were no footprints, which in the deep snow is equivalent of nature saying, "Congratulations, you have discovered something you didn't want to." The Karelia Forest Shadow, Russia. In the wilderness forests of Republic of Karelia, locals tell stories of shapes they call the Black Walker. Hunters say the figure appears between trees during twilight, always tall, always thin, always silent. It stands behind trunks as if hiding. One hunter described raising his rifle before realizing something was wrong. The shadow leaned sideways without moving its feet, sliding behind the tree like liquid. Then it was gone. The hunter reportedly decided the forest could keep whatever it was guarding. The St. Petersburg apartment shadow in Russia. In the early 2000s, a cluster of reports came from an apartment building in St. Petersburg. Residents described seeing human-shaped shadows walking through hallways late at night. Security cameras occasionally caught what looked like a dark blur crossing the frame, no person visible. Just a moving absence of light. One night guard said the shadow passed across the corridor and entered an apartment door. The apartment had been empty for 6 months. Even ghosts apparently struggle with the housing market. In a remote cabin scattered through Nordland, hikers sometimes reported waking to see a shadow figure standing by the window. No facial features, just the shape of a tall person. Witnesses say it doesn't move until you move. Then it glides out of sight. Several hikers claim the figure was visible outside the cabin, even though the snow outside was untouched. No tracks, no sound, just a visitor who apparently prefers not to knock. Urban explorers in the Swedish tunnel silhouette. Urban explorers exploring abandoned subway tunnels in Stockholm have occasionally reported a shadow figure standing far down the track. At first, they assumed it was another explorer or security, but the silhouette behaves oddly. It remains completely still, even when light shines directly at it. Then it suddenly steps sideways into darkness, vanishing into the wall or tunnel curve. A few explorers said that the experience felt less like seeing a ghost and more like being observed by something curious. The Finnish winter road shadow. Drivers on isolated highway in Lapland occasionally describe seeing a person-shaped shadow crossing the road, which isn't unusual until a headlight hits it. Instead of revealing a person, the shadow simply disappears mid-road. No one there. The footsteps on the snow, no footsteps on the snow. Just a fading memory of something that was briefly shaped like a human. Highway ghosts are one thing, but shadows that vanish under headlights feel like the universe momentarily buffering. The rice field watcher in rural Japan. Farmers in isolated part of Shikoku have long described seeing a tall shadow standing at the edge of rice fields after sunset. The figure appears motionless beside irrigation paths. When approached, it slowly leans away into darkness, disappearing behind trees or tall grass. Some farmers say it resembles a wandering spirit. Others think it might be connected to stories of hitojama, which sometimes appear near graves and rural roads. But unlike the glowing orbs, this one prefers to stay in the dark. The abandoned school shadow in Japan. In rural school closed decades ago in Akita Prefecture, paranormal investigators reported seeing something unsettling during a nighttime exploration. A tall shadow moved across the hallway wall, except there was no light source behind it. Investigators filmed the corridor for several hours. At one point, the camera recorded what looked like a shadow crossing the doorway. The room behind that door was empty. One investigator joked that the school may have closed, but attendance never stopped. The Kyoto Temple Nightwalker. Visitors and monks near old temples in Kyoto occasionally describe seeing a dark human shape walking between stone lanterns at night. The silhouette is sometimes mistaken for another visitor, until it passes through a lantern's light without revealing any details. No face, no clothing. Just a perfect human outline carved from darkness. Witnesses say the figure disappears behind temple gates, which sounds poetic until you realize the gates were locked. The Scandinavian corner people. Paranormal researchers in Denmark and Sweden have documented a surprisingly common report. People waking in the night to see a shadow figures standing in corners of bedrooms, not moving, just watching. Several witnesses describe multiple figures, tall, thin, silent. When lights are turned on, they vanish instantly. Some researchers suspect this might connect to sleep paralysis hallucinations. Others point out something stranger. Witnesses across different countries describe the same detail. The shadows appear to lean slightly forward, as if stunning the person in bed, which is the exact moment most people decide sleep is overrated. Across Russian frozen forests, Scandinavian silent highways, and Japan's quiet rice fields, the same shape appears again and again. A human outline made entirely of darkness, no voice, no footsteps, just a silhouette standing where no one should be. True modern shadow sightings. The Hatman and other night visitors. The global Hatman wave 2000s. Around the early 2000s, paranormal researchers began noticing something odd. People who had never heard of shadow figures were describing the same silhouette: tall, black, standing silently in bedrooms, and wearing a wide brim hat. The figure became widely known as Hat Man. Online paranormal communities began collecting accounts across around 2004 to 2006. Witnesses described nearly identical details: 6 to 7 feet tall, solid black silhouette, trench coat or long coat, fedora-style hat, often standing near a doorway or bed. The strangest part was how witnesses reacted. Many didn't feel like they were seeing a ghost. They felt like they were being observed. One woman in Ohio described waking up and seeing the figure leaning against her bedroom wall. She said the shape tipped his hat slightly, almost like someone acknowledging her presence, then stepped backwards into the corner and simply disappeared. The sleep study Hat Man, 2008. During a sleep paralysis study conducted in the United States in 2008, one participant reported something disturbing. He woke up unable to move. Standing near the foot of his bed was a tall shadow figure wearing a hat. The figure remained motionless for nearly 30 seconds before fading away. When researchers interviewed him later, he said something that stuck with them. I didn't feel like I was part of a dream. I didn't feel like it was part of a dream. Sleep paralysis hallucinations are common, but the hat detail appears repeatedly across thousands of accounts. Some researchers believe cultural influence explains it. Others quietly admit something else. People were describing Hat Man before they ever heard of Hat Man. The security camera shadow, 2009. In 2009, a warehouse night guard in Texas claimed he repeatedly saw a shadow person walking across the ends of a hallway. He assumed it was another guard, except the building was empty. One night, the guard checked the security footage. On a monitor, a dark silhouette briefly crossed the corridor. The cameras recorded motion, but there's no visible person. Just a darker section of the frame moving from one side to the other. The guard reportedly transferred shifts soon after. Apparently, daytime feels safer when shadows start using the hallways. The hospital hallway figure. Nurses on overnight shifts sometimes report strange things, and hospitals have their own quiet mythology. One nurse working a late shift described seeing a tall shadow figure standing near the end of a patient hallway. She assumed it was a doctor checking charts. When she walked towards the figure, it turned the corner. She followed. The hallway beyond was empty. No doors open. No one walking away. Just fluorescent lights humming in a long stretch of tile floor. She later said the figure didn't look like a person standing in the light. It looked like light refusing to touch a person-shaped space. Some of the creepiest Reddit stories that I found. The thing in the corner. A user described waking up at 3 a.m. and seeing a tall shadow standing in the corner of their room. They assumed it was a pile of clothes. Then the shadow shifted its weight. Not much. Just enough to make the brain whisper, "That pile of clothes has knees." The witness pulled the blanket over their head. When they looked again, the corner was empty, which might be comforting until you start wondering where it went. The hallway runner. One Reddit poster described hearing footsteps outside their bedroom door late at night. They opened the door, expecting to see a roommate. Instead, they saw a small shadow figure sprint down the hallway, child-sized, perfect silhouette. It turned a corner and vanished. The house had no children, which means something small had somewhere to run. The hat by the window. One witness described waking up and seeing a tall shadow wearing what looked like a wide-brimmed hat standing beside the bedroom window. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there. After about 20 seconds, it slowly faded like smoke dissolving into darkness. The witness wrote something that stuck with a lot of readers. It didn't feel threatened. It felt like something was checking something. Felt like it was checking something. That's somehow worse. The staircase watcher. A Reddit user described reportedly seeing a shadow person standing halfway up their staircase late at night. Always the same position, always still. Whenever they turned the light on, the figure vanished instantly. One night they decided to walk towards it in the dark. The figure remained there until they were only a few steps away. Then it moved upward without making a sound and disappeared at the top landing. The witness never followed, because some staircases don't need answers. The one that looked back. One account describes seeing a shadow figure standing in a doorway. The witness froze. The silhouette seems to notice. Then the shadow slowly turned its head. Not the whole body, just the head. That small movement was enough. The witness said they slept with lights on for a week. Because once something looks back, the story stops feeling imaginary. Across internet forums, sleep labs, hospital corridors, and quiet bedrooms, the same shape keeps appearing, a human silhouette carved from darkness. No voice, no footsteps, just the sense that something stepped briefly into our world and then stepped out again. "10 dark Reddit shadow encounters." The closet door that opened. A user wrote that when they were a teenager, they used to sleep with their closet door shut. One night they woke up and saw the door slowly opening. Inside the closet was total darkness. Then something darker than the darkness stepped forward. A human-shaped shadow filled the doorway. It didn't move towards the bed. It didn't speak. It just stood there. The witness said they stared at it for nearly a minute before they finally squeezed their eyes shut. When they looked again, the closet door was closed. But the next morning, every hanger in the closet had been pushed to one side, like something had brushed through them. The thing that sat on the bed. One Reddit poster described waking up around 4 a.m. They felt the mattress sink near their feet. The weight slowly moved up the bed. The witness couldn't see anything at first. Then their eyes adjusted to the darkness. A human-shaped shadow was sitting beside them. The figure turned its head slightly, like it was listening. Then it stood up and walked towards the bedroom door. The door opened. The hallway light flicked on. But the shadow didn't cast any reflection in the light at all. It just slipped through the doorway. The hallway wasn't empty. A college student wrote about living alone in a small apartment. One night they heard footsteps moving slowly down the hallway. They assumed it was the upstairs neighbor, but the footsteps stopped directly outside their bedroom door. The witness opened the door quickly. No one there. Except at the far end of the hallway, they saw a shadow person step into the bathroom. The door was already closed. There was nowhere for anything to go. The shape in the window. One witness described seeing a tall shadow outside their bedroom window. They lived on the second floor. The silhouette looked like a man wearing a long coat. It stood perfectly still. After about 30 seconds, the figure slowly leaned closer to the glass. The witness turned on the light. The figure vanished instantly. The next morning, they checked outside. There was nothing beneath the window. No ladder, no tree, just empty ground. The child in the kitchen. A Reddit user wrote about waking up late at night to get water. In the kitchen, they saw a small shadow standing near the refrigerator. It looked like a child. They assumed it was their younger sibling. The shadow turned and ran down the hallway. When the witness followed, the hallway was empty. Everyone in the house was asleep. And their younger sibling was only 3 years old, not tall enough to reach the refrigerator light. The figure that followed the car. One user described driving home late at night through rural roads. At a stop sign, they noticed something strange in the headlights. A tall shadow figure standing on the shoulder of the road. They thought it was someone waiting for a ride, but when the car started moving again, the figure stayed visible in the mirror. Not getting smaller, not getting farther away, just keeping up the same distance behind the car, or almost a mile. Then the road curved, and the mirror showed nothing. The shadow in a mirror. One Reddit poster said that they saw a shadow person standing behind them in the bathroom mirror. When they turned around, no one there. When they looked back at the mirror, the shadow was still there, standing near the doorway. The witness stepped out of the bathroom quickly. When they looked again, the mirror was normal. They covered it with a towel that night, which is a very human response to something that refuses to behave logically. The thing on the stairs. A user wrote about repeatedly seeing a shadow figure crouched halfway down their staircase at night. It looks like someone sitting on the steps with their head lowered. The user finally decided to confront it. They walked down the hallway towards the stairs. The shadow slowly stood up. It was taller than expected, much taller. Then it stepped backward into the darkness below the stairs and disappeared. The witness never checked under the stairs. Some doors don't need opening. The one did not. One story described a person hearing 3 knocks on their bedroom wall. Not the door, the wall. They knocked back jokingly. 3 knocks came again. Then the witness saw something strange. A shadow figure slowly stretched across the wall from the ceiling corner, like a silhouette climbing down the paint. The witness left the room and slept on the couch, which might be the smartest decision of the entire internet. The visitor that was waiting. One of the creepiest accounts came from someone who woke up and saw a shadow standing beside their bedroom door. They assumed it was sleep paralysis. They couldn't move. The shadow stayed there for several minutes. Then the witness said something disturbing. The figure seemed to realize they were awake. It slowly tilted its head and took a single step toward the bed. That's when the paralysis broke. The witness jumped up. The room was empty, but the door was now open. Across thousands of witness accounts, one detail keeps repeating. The shadows don't rush. They don't attack. They just stand there. Like they've been waiting, like they've been watching us for a very long time. Before we close the lantern for the night, let's talk about the oldest companion humanity has ever had. Not gods, not ghosts, not monsters hiding under the bed, shadows. Every human who has ever lived has walked beside one. In the morning light, it follows you politely across the ground. In the afternoon, it stretches beside you like a tired dog. And at night, it disappears. But here's the strange thing about shadows. They never really leave. And they never actually do leave. They simply go somewhere the light cannot reach. And for thousands of years, people across the world have whispered the same uneasy thought. What if the shadows don't just belong to us? What if some of them belong to something else? Across continents that never spoke to each other, people described the same encounter. A shape darker than the darkness, standing in the corner of a room, watching, no footsteps, no breathing. Just the quiet awareness that you are no longer alone. In Japan, they spoke of a shadow that appeared on walls without a body to cast them. In Europe, travelers swore something walked beside them through forest long after the road had ended. In modern cities, people wake in the middle of the night and see a figure standing in the doorway, tall, silent, patient, sometimes wearing a hat like an old traveler who's been wandering a very long road. Science tells us these things are tricks of the mind, sleep paralysis, stress. The brain trying to make sense of shapes in darkness, and maybe that's true. Our minds are powerful things. They can invent entire dreams while we sleep. But here's the uncomfortable question. Why do our minds keep inventing the same visitor? Why the same shape? Why the same silent watcher standing just out of reach? across different countries, different languages, different centuries. It's almost as if humanity has been seeing the same silhouette for a very long time. Now imagine something for a moment. Imagine that reality is not a single world, but two rooms separated by a thin wall. We live in one room, bright, loud, filled with noise and movement and electric light. The other room is darker, quiet, and maybe something lives there? Something that occasionally leans close to the wall and looks through the cracks, and every now and then, when the lights go out and the world becomes still, the wall between the rooms grows thin. Hey James, how are you? Just thin enough for a shadow to slip through. Not fully. Just the outline, just the shape. A silhouette pressed against the fabric of our world like a hand against frosted glass. Watching, curious, maybe confused. After all, imagine how strange we must look to them. Creatures who carry the sun inside little glass bulbs. Creatures who build cities bright enough to erase the stars. Bright enough to erase the stars. Creatures who stay awake long enough after night has asked us to sleep. Maybe the watchers are simply observers, tourists in the dark, peeking into our rooms the same way we peer into aquariums, studying the strange little creatures moving inside the light. Or maybe they are something older, something that was here long before first fire was lit, long before the first story was told around a campfire. Perhaps the shadow has always belonged to someone, and every once in a while, their owners come back to check on them. Which brings us to tonight, right now. Wherever you are listening, maybe you're driving through a quiet road, maybe you're lying in bed. Maybe the road around you is lit by the soft glow of a screen. Look around for a moment. Notice the corners of the room. The places the light doesn't quite reach. The doorway, the hallway, the edge of a ceiling where darkness pools like still water. Most nights, those shadows belong only to you. But once in a very great while, one of them might not. And if that ever happens, if you ever wake up and see a shape standing quietly in the corner of your room, don't panic. Don't scream. Just remember something ancient. Humans have always feared the dark, but the dark has been watching us far longer. So if you find yourself staring into the silhouette of something that wasn't there a moment ago, you might try something simple. A small gesture, a polite one. Just raise your hand. Give the shadow a little wave. Because if the watchers truly are out there, standing silently at this edge of our world, then somewhere tonight, one of them might be listening too. And from the deck of this wandering ghost ship called the Phantom Navigator, I'll leave you with this final thought. The night is never empty. It's simply full of things that prefer not to be seen. Sleep well, travelers, and keep an eye on the shadows. They've certainly been keeping an eye on you.